I'm Rosie Hardy, this is Rosie Hardy Gardening, and we've got back to question and answers. So let's get going because there are quite a few. Hello Rosie, I live in a city, Nijmegen, I haven't pronounced that right, I'm sure, in the Netherlands. My garden I grow Stachys byzantina for the foliage, but I'm finding that it gets worse after it's flowered and then it doesn't look very good once you get into the autumn. Wondering whether she should replace the Stachys byzantina with perhaps big ears, which is another variety which has got much larger foliage, etc. And just see, wondering what they're doing wrong. So really what you need to remember to do is once your Stachys has flowered, you need to cut it right back down to ground level. So you're not just deadheading, you're taking all the old foliage off as well. You can then give it a liquid feed and it should then reproduce and give you lovely, good looking grey foliage. If you don't do that and you leave older foliage, it does tend to get a little bit mildewy, and that is what you're seeing. You're seeing these brown leaves that are just dying off and not looking very good. Now, Stachys big ears is lovely. It's a really great plant, but you're still going to get some of the same problems with that. So it's how you manage the plants, especially if you get a very dry summer. Then you want to be making sure you're cutting it right back down. You can do it with a strimmer if you really want to, but cut it down to ground level and then water it and give it a liquid feed. And that will encourage it to regrow and you'll get much, much better foliage, which will last for a lot longer through the winter months. Now, once you start to get a lot of heavy frost, a lot of rain, and even snow later on in the winter months, the foliage will start to deteriorate again and you'll need to clean it up in the spring and get all the fresh coming through. I hope that helps you. I'm losing a number of my outdoor potted plants to vine weevil and wanting to sort out a regime for treating them. Okay, so this is quite an important thing to remember. Vine weevil love plants that are in containers because a lot of people forget to repot regularly their plants. And if you repot regularly, you can find the grubs, you can feed those to the birds. I tell you what, our robins love them. You know, we just keep them all, put them down on the side, robin comes, eats the whole lot. We've got really fat little robins on the few plants that still get vine weevil. So vine weevil will attack Saxifragiaceae group. So you're looking at sedums, hylotelephiums, Saxifrages themselves, heucheras, cyclamen, all those things which have got really quite nice, hardy geraniums as well, they actually like those. Anything that's got a really big, thick root which they can burrow into and not totally kill the plant, but just sort of weaken it a bit. That is what they like. So please check your plants. Please, if you can, repot twice a year. That will help. But also twice a year, get hold of Nemesis. Nemesis is the trade name for the actual nematodes that you buy for vine weevil. And you can apply those in the spring and you can apply them in the autumn. Now it needs to be when the soil temperature, so the pot soil temperatures, this is the key thing, not the air temperature, but the pot soil temperature needs to be above +5 degrees Celsius or 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So that is when you can start using it. And if you have bad infestations, then I would suggest using it 1 month followed by another month. You're better off starting to use it probably mid-April because that's when the grubs are active. If your soil temperature is better before that, then do it before that. But usually sort of start of April, and then I'd give another one mid-May. And then wait until September and do probably end of September, October for your late season one as well. And that should help. And if you do that as a regular regime, along with the repotting, you should get on top of the vine weevil. Hello Rosie, how can I save my amaryllis bulb for next year? She has no blooms, leaves haven't grown, they're green but it's short. Okay, so I'm probably not the best person to tell you how to look after amaryllis. I know the basics of what you should do, But I have to say, I fail myself every year. So don't feel bad if you cannot get your bulbs to regrow. The advice is that once they have bloomed and the flowers have got spent flowers, you cut those flowers down. You leave the leaf there until the leaf goes limp and yellow, and then you cut the leaf down to the bulb. The bulbs should then be put somewhere probably outside, watered from the top a little bit, but maybe left to dry off and just go dormant. That's the best thing. So you can put them outside and forget them, bring them back in, start watering from the top with a little bit of feed, and they should then put on leaf and come up. They need a good amount of light through the winter months. That's the key thing for them. And then they should come back. The answer to that is should, and it never works for me, but I know people who it works for regularly. So try it. If not, just buy a new one each year, which is ready to go and will flower and bloom for you. Why does my stag's horn not turn a beautiful red in the autumn? It's in a south facing, it's 6 foot high, never turned red, just gone straight brown, healthy, looks fine in every other way. Right, Roost Finer, probably you have got a clone that is not doing it. But the other thing that I have suddenly thought about when I was looking at this was the fact you said it looked healthy in every other way. I'm wondering if you're feeding it too much. They like really poor, horrible, free draining, grotty soil, and then they do incredibly well. So although you've got it south facing, are you mulching it? Are you giving it a feed? In which case, stop doing that, because that's the key thing. It needs to be starved. The more starved it is, the better colour you will get from it. I know that sounds really horrible, but they survive very, very well on those conditions. So just try that. Don't feed it, don't mulch it, and hopefully you will get colour. Otherwise, I'm afraid it may just be a clone that doesn't colour up. Hello, Rosie. Would you mind talking about how you take cuttings from Japanese maple, Acer palmatum, please? I'd love to hear about the process and recommendations. Again, tree cuttings, hardwood cuttings are not necessarily my speciality, but you will find that the majority of named Acer palmatums are actually grafted. You sow seeds of the plants, you get young plants growing, they are then your rootstock. You then take beautiful young pieces of the top softwood and you would graft those onto your new rootstock. That is how they are produced commercially. You can, however, do cuttings, and the cuttings tend to be something which is a softwood cutting with a heel. So you go to a nice piece of material that is somewhere around about 10 to 15 centimetres long, somewhere between 4 and 6 inches, looking really good, still got nice soft growth in it, and you go down to the main stem and you take it with a little bit of tiny heel on it, and that you would then put into cutting compost. It will sit in the cutting compost right the way through the winter, but it does require basal heat. You cannot just put it outside in a cold frame. It needs to go onto a propagator with basal heat, and that will help it to callus over through the winter months, and then in the spring it will start to root and put on new shoots. So hopefully that helps. Hello Rosie, what activities would you recommend for gardeners to focus on during the cold short days of winter? Thank you. Well, this is one of those things, isn't it? A lot of people think the garden has gone to sleep. Well, here in the UK, there are lots of jobs that you can still do out in the garden. If you happen to be in the USA, Canada, then the winter months you're probably covered in snow, so you can't do an awful lot. So it depends on where you are in the world as to what you are expecting to be able to do. Here in the UK, you will still be pruning a lot of your trees and shrubs, especially your fruit trees, because your fruit trees, your apples and your pears, you'll be starting to do the pruning of those through December, January, February. Once you get into the end of February, beginning of March, you would start on your pruners, so such as your plums and your cherries. So there's a lot of that sort of work to carry on doing. A lot of editing can be done. So you can look at your photographs of your garden through the year and you can go, right, that bed, what am I going to be doing with that? Do I need to take that plant out? Do I need to be splitting it? And gives you some spring work. So you can start doing that sort of thing. Then, of course, there are the veg seeds. Ordering seeds is fun, but do be careful. Don't have too much. And when you do start to sow, do little and often. You'll find you have much more success rather than doing the whole lot in one batch. Little and often with all your seeds, whether it's your veg seeds or your flower seeds, little and often, because if you fail with one batch, the next one might come through better. So just remember, small, little and often with those. Cleaning tools. That is one of the big things that you can do through the winter cold months. You can repair tools. That's the other thing as well. Really, really good. So that gives you a few bits and pieces of what I would think you should be able to get on with. And some of those jobs, luckily, are inside and warm. I have a few pots of discounted Roseanne that I bought from a local garden centre. Realised they've got a bacterial leaf. I've got reds, browns, spotches all over them. Prune the leaves off. Grown back, still got the defect. Is it a mildew? Check the symptoms. Should I bin them? Will they spread stuff? And, you know, you can all read this. Sorry, I'm not reading it out terribly well at the moment. I would say if they've got that type of marking on them and they're regrowing with it, they have got something which is known as bacterial leaf spot. Bacterial leaf spot will have got into the crown of the plant and it will just keep on coming back. So once plants are diseased, I'm sorry, you need to bin them. They would be better off burnt if you are able to burn. If not, don't put them on the compost heap because you will just spread that around the garden. So because this is a disease that is spread from plant to plant by water splash. So if you have clean material in the garden, you do not want to put infected material next to them. So it is best to bin them, you know, bag them and bin them. That is the best thing that I can say. So put them into a bag, seal it up, put it into the normal rubbish. Do not put it into a green waste because again, you're just going to be sending that bacteria off to someone else's garden, or even if you get the green waste back, you might get it back yourself. So do be very, very careful with that. Also, the one thing I would say is if you have used your snips or secateurs or whatever it is you've used to cut off the dead leaves, don't go and then use those on clean plants. Make sure that you've cleaned them in between. So disinfect those secateurs or snips before you use them on anywhere else. This is all about cleanliness, but this is the problem sometimes. Some plants in the discounted line, brilliant, absolutely no problem at all. But if they've got one of these bacterial spots, you do not want to be bringing that into your garden, okay? I'm considering leaving my dahlia tubers in the ground, worried about frost damage. They are planted next to a south-facing wall. Understand that this can help them. Will fleecing help? Thank you very much. The Dahlia Society in the UK has switched from digging up the dahlias to saying please leave them in the ground. Now this was before we started to get some very erratic wet then cold, wet then cold, and last season a lot of people lost the dahlias that were in the ground. Other people kept them, so it really is dependent on your soil. If your soil is heavier and going to get very, very wet, then I would lift them. If your soil is free draining, then you're going to have much more success. Also, the depth at which your dahlias are planted, the deeper, the better, because then they can survive through. Now, a south-facing wall acts like a radiator and will keep the temperature high, but it's not all about temperature. It's about the moisture level in the ground and the amount of wet, cold water that gets down to those tubers. So I would suggest if you can, rather than just using fleece, there's nothing wrong with fleece, you can put fleece over the top, but I would get a cloche and put a cloche over the top of your plants and then stuff the cloche with either straw or fleece to keep the temperature at the surface. That will mean you get a dry area around the top there and will help really, really well. But do remember that if you use straw or even fleece, it's a wonderful place now for the slugs and snails to get in. So once you think it's about time that the dahlias are going to be coming through, just get all of that material off, clear it away of slugs and snails, and just leave the cloche over completely to allow the plant to grow and come back through. If you're really worried about your dahlias, then always take some cuttings that you can overwinter inside. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel.